The wind screamed through the mountains like a wounded animal. Snow fell so thick that Tae-Hyan could barely see 3 feet in front of his face. He pulled his coat tighter and hurried toward his cabin, a small wooden structure he had built 5 years ago when he left the city for good. The storm had come earlier than expected, and he needed to secure the storage shed before the wind tore it apart. Tae-Hyan was 32 years old, though most days he felt much older. His black hair was getting longer than he liked, and his hands were rough from years of working with tools and wood. He had been an engineer once, working on secret military projects that he never talked about. Something had happened during those years, something that made him leave everything behind and hide in these mountains. He never told anyone what it was. The storage shed door was banging in the wind when he reached it. Tae-Hyan grabbed the handle and pulled it open, ready to tie it down with rope. That was when he saw her. She was lying on the floor between stacks of firewood and old equipment. Her skin was silver, actually silver, and it seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. She wore strange clothing that looked like it was made from metal and fabric combined. Her eyes were closed, and her breathing was shallow. Blood, darker than human blood, stained her side. Tae-Hyan stood frozen for several seconds. His brain refused to process what he was seeing. This was not possible. This could not be real. But the woman groaned softly, and the sound broke through his shock. He knelt beside her and checked her pulse. It was there, but strange, like 2 heartbeats instead of 1. Her skin was warm despite the cold air. She had cuts and burns across her arms and torso. Whatever had happened to her, it had been violent. The woman's eyes opened suddenly. They were unlike anything Tae-Hyan had ever seen. The color shifted from blue to purple to something that looked like stars moving in deep space. She stared at him with fear and tried to move away, but she was too weak. "Don't move," Tae-Hyan said, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're hurt." She said something in a language that sounded like music and water flowing over stones. Then she tried again, this time in broken Korean. "Help ... please ... They hunt me." Tae-Hyan made a decision in that moment that would change his life forever. He could have run. He could have called the authorities. Instead, he carefully lifted the woman in his arms. She was lighter than she looked. He carried her through the storm to his cabin and laid her on his bed. For the next hour, Tae-Hyan worked on her injuries with the medical supplies he kept in his cabin. He had learned field medicine in the military, though treating humans was very different from whatever this woman was. The medicine seemed to work, but not always in the ways he expected. The antiseptic made some wounds close faster, but caused others to swell. He did his best and hoped it was enough that the woman drifted in and out of consciousness. When she was awake, she watched him with those strange eyes. Tae-Hyan tried to ask her questions, but she was too weak to answer more than a few words. At a time dot, by the time night fell, the storm was even worse. Tae-Hyan sat in his old chair near the fire, drinking tea and trying to make sense of what was happening. The woman slept fitfully, occasionally saying words in her own language. He noticed a device attached to her belt, small and metallic, that hummed with a soft blue light. Around midnight, the woman woke up properly for the first time. She sat up slowly, wincing in pain, and looked around the cabin. Her eyes settled on Tae-Hyan. "Thank you," she said in Korean. Her accent was heavy, but understandable. "I am Lyra." "Tae-Hyan," he replied. "What are you?" "I am Velanir," she said. "From far away." "Very far." She gestured upward, meaning space. "I came to warn." "Warn who?" "About what?" Before Lyra could answer, she suddenly tensed. Her hand went to the device on her belt, and her face filled with terror. "They found me. They are close." Tae-Hyan went to the window and looked out. Through the snow, He could see lights in the sky. They were not stars. They were moving in patterns that no aircraft could manage, hovering and searching. The lights were blue and harsh, cutting through the storm like searchlights. "Who is looking for you?" Te-Hyan asked. "The Krath," Lyra said. "They hunt me because I know their plan. They want to destroy your world. They want to take your people." Te-Hyan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold outside. He had seen many things in his military career, things that the public never knew about. He had learned to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. Everything about this situation screamed danger, but something in Lyra's eyes told him she was telling the truth. The lights in the sky moved closer. Te-Hyan could hear a low humming sound now, getting louder. He made another quick decision. "Come with me," he said. He helped Lyra stand and led her to the back of the cabin. There was a rug on the floor that he pulled aside, revealing a trapdoor. His grandfather had built this basement during old wars, a place to hide when enemies came. Te-Hyan had kept it maintained without really knowing why. Now he understood. The basement was small and cold, but it was hidden. Concrete walls, ventilation shafts, and supplies that could last for weeks. Te-Hyan had added some things over the years, including a communication system that he used to contact the outside world when needed. He settled Lyra on a cot and gave her blankets. "Stay here and stay quiet. Don't make any sound." "What will you do?" Lyra asked. "I'm going to see who comes knocking," Te-Hyan said. "And if I don't like what I see, I'm going to make sure they don't find you." He went back upstairs and closed the trapdoor, replacing the rug. The humming was much louder now. Te-Hyan went to a locked chest in his closet and opened it. Inside were things from his old life. A pistol, a tactical knife, communication equipment, and other tools that he had sworn he would never use again. He loaded the pistol and put it in his belt. Then he went to the window and watched as the lights descended toward his mountain. The storm raged around them, but the lights did not waver. Te-Hyan thought about the woman in his basement, injured and alone, being hunted by something that traveled between stars. He thought about her words. "They want to take your people." Whatever was coming, Te-Hyan would not let them have her without a fight. He had left the military to escape violence, but violence had found him anyway. The difference was that this time, he was choosing to stand his ground for someone who needed help. The lights touched down in the forest near his cabin. Through the snow, Te-Hyan could see shapes moving. They were larger than humans and moved with purpose. They were coming for Lyra. Te-Hyan checked his pistol one more time and waited in the darkness. The storm howled. The cabin creaked. And somewhere in the sky above, a war he did not understand had just arrived at his doorstep, that the hunters did not come that night. They circled the mountain like wolves around prey, their lights scanning the forest and the snow. Te-Hyan watched them from his window, staying back in the shadows where they could not see him. Several times the lights came close to his cabin, but they always moved on. The storm helped hide him. The thick snow made their sensors less effective, or so he hoped that by morning, the lights had moved to the other side of the mountain. Te-Hyan waited another hour to be sure, then went down to the basement. Lyra was awake, sitting up on the cot with her arms wrapped around herself. She looked better than the night before. Her wounds were already starting to heal in ways that seemed impossible. "They are still searching," Lyra said. It was not a question. "Yes," Te-Hyan replied. "But they haven't found us yet. You need to tell me everything. Why are they hunting you? What did you mean about destroying my world?" Lyra stood up slowly and walked to the small table in the basement. She took the device from her belt and placed it on the table. When she touched it, the device projected light into the air. The light formed shapes and images that floated like ghosts. "I am a scholar," Lyra said. I study other species and cultures. My people, the Velanir, are part of a group called the Collective. Many different species working together, sharing knowledge, helping each other. We explore the galaxy and try to understand it. The images showed alien beings of all kinds. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Hayan could not describe them. They lived on worlds of ice, of fire, of water, and crystal. Cities that floated in the sky. Ships that moved between stars, like fish swimming in an ocean. 6 months ago, my people discovered something terrible, Lyra continued. Her voice became heavy with sadness. We found evidence of a plan by the Craft Dominion. The Craft are conquerors. They take what they want and destroy anything that stands in their way. But they do not just want resources or territory. They want to study species that have special qualities. Then they take what they learn and kill everyone. They have done this to 17 different species that we know about. The images changed. Now they showed worlds that were dead, cities in ruins, skies filled with ash. Hayan felt sick looking at them. What does this have to do with Earth? He asked, though he was starting to understand. Your species is next on their list, Lyra said. Humans have something the Craft find very interesting. Your brains work differently than most species in the galaxy. You adapt quickly. You solve problems in creative ways. You refuse to give up even when logic says you should. The Craft want to study this. They want to understand it so they can use it for their soldiers. And when they are done studying you, they will erase your entire species. Hayan sat down heavily on a chair. He wanted to say this was impossible. He wanted to call her crazy. But he had seen the lights in the sky. He had seen Lyra's silver skin and shifting eyes. He knew impossible things were happening, whether he believed them or not. How long do we have? He asked. 6 months, Lyra said. Maybe less. The Craft fleet is already on its way. My delegation came to this region of space to gather more information. We were going to warn your people and offer help. But the Craft found us. They captured our ship and killed most of my crew. I escaped in a small pod and crashed near your mountains. I was trying to reach your cities when I collapsed. Hayan looked at the images floating above the device. Star maps, lists of coordinates, documents in languages he could not read, and pictures. Pictures of Earth from space. Pictures of cities and people. Pictures of soldiers and weapons. You have proof, he said. Yes, Lyra replied. Everything is in this device. Star maps showing the Craft fleet's route. Communication intercepts. Records of the other species they destroyed. Your leaders need to see this. They need to prepare. They won't believe it, Hayan said. Even with proof, they won't want to believe it. Humans are good at ignoring dangers that seem too big or too strange. Then we make them believe, Lyra said. We must try. What is the alternative? Do nothing and let your species die? Hayan thought about this. He thought about the billions of people on Earth who had no idea what was coming. People living their normal lives, going to work, raising children, making plans for the future. A future that might not exist in 6 months. He made his decision. I have a friend. Her name is Hay1. She works for the military in a special program. I used to work with her before I left. If anyone will listen, it's her. Hayan went to his communication equipment and started setting up a secure connection. It took almost an hour. He had to use old codes and passwords, things he had not touched in 5 years. Finally, a voice came through the speakers. This is Colonel Hay1. Who is this? It's Hayan, he said. There was a long pause. Hayan, where have you been? We thought you were dead. I've been in the mountains, living alone. But I need your help, Hey One. Something is happening. Something big. I need you to come to my location, and I need you to come quietly. Don't tell anyone where you're going. You know I can't do that, Hey One said. I'm a colonel now. I can't just disappear. Please, Taehayan said. Trust me like you did before. I would not contact you unless it was important. The whole world is in danger. Another pause. Hey One had known Taehayan for 15 years. They had served together, fought together, survived things together. She knew he did not lie about serious matters. I'll come, she said. But this better not be some kind of joke. It's not, Taehayan said. And Hey One? Come armed. There are things in these mountains that want to kill me and the person I'm protecting. He gave her his coordinates and ended the transmission. Lyra had been watching from across the room. Will she help us? Lyra asked. If anyone can, it's her, Taehayan said. But we have another problem. Those hunters are still out there. They know you're somewhere on this mountain. It's only a matter of time before they search this area more carefully. I know, Lyra said. I am sorry I brought this danger to you. You could have left me in the shed to die. Your life would be simpler. Maybe, Taehayan said. But I stopped living a long time ago. I just existed. You've given me a reason to actually do something that matters. Over the next 2 days, they waited. Taehayan kept watch while Lyra rested and healed. She told him more about the galaxy and the collective. She told him about her home world, a place with 3 moons and oceans that glowed at night. She told him about her work studying primitive cultures and how she had always found humanity fascinating even before this mission. Taehayan told her about his life, about his time in the military, about the project he had worked on that went wrong and got people killed, about how he ran away to the mountains because he could not face the guilt. You think you are a coward, Lyra said, but a coward would have left me to die. A coward would have run away when the hunters came. You are not what you think you are, Taehayan. On the 3rd day, Hai One arrived. She came alone in a civilian vehicle, wearing regular clothes instead of a uniform. She was a tall woman with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When she saw Lyra, those eyes went wide. What is that? Hey One asked. Her name is Lyra, Taehayan said, and she's about to tell you why Earth has 6 months to prepare for an invasion. They sat in the cabin while Lyra explained everything again. She showed the device and its contents to Hey One. The colonel's face went from skeptical to worried to terrified as she understood what she was seeing. This is real, Hey One said. It was not a question. Yes, Lyra said. And in 6 months, an alien fleet is going to arrive and try to harvest humanity for experiments. Yes. Hai One stood up and walked to the window. She was quiet for a long time. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. The sky was clear and blue. It looked peaceful. It looked safe. No one is going to believe this, Hey One said finally. Then we make them believe, Taehayan said. Before anyone could respond, the humming sound returned. All 3 of them heard it. The lights were back, and this time they were coming straight for the cabin. The lights landed in the clearing in front of Taehayan's cabin. 3 shapes emerged from the brightness, and they were not human. They stood almost 7 feet tall, covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their helmets had no visible eyes, just smooth surfaces that somehow felt like they were staring right through the cabin walls. Taehayan moved quickly. Hey, One, get Lyra to the basement, now. Hey, One did not argue. She grabbed Lyra and pulled her toward the trapdoor. Lyra resisted for a moment, reaching for her device, but Taehayan already had it. I can help you fight them, Lyra said. I know their technology. Good, Heian said. Then help me from down there. Tell me what they can do. Once they were hidden, Heian grabbed his pistol and positioned himself near the window. The three craft hunters moved toward the cabin in a formation, weapons raised. Their guns were sleek and cruel-looking, glowing with red energy. A voice boomed from one of the hunters. It spoke in English, but the accent was mechanical and wrong. Human, we detect the fugitive inside your structure. Surrender her immediately, and you will be allowed to live. Heian did not respond. Instead, he touched the device Lyra had given him. A small earpiece activated, and he could hear her voice from the basement. Their armor is strong, but not perfect, Lyra said. The joints are vulnerable. Their helmets have sensors that can see heat and movement, but they rely heavily on their technology. If you can disrupt their systems, they become much weaker. How do I disrupt their systems? Heian whispered. Electromagnetic pulse. Do you have anything that can generate one? Heian thought fast. He had built several things over the years in his workshop. Experimental devices from his military days that he had never quite abandoned. One of them might work. The hunters were at the door now. One of them raised its weapon and fired. The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. They entered the cabin, moving with mechanical precision, but Heian was not there. He had already slipped out the back window and was running toward the workshop shed. The hunters would search the cabin first. That gave him maybe 2 minutes. He burst into the workshop and went straight to a metal box in the corner. Inside was a device he had built 3 years ago when he was bored and restless. It was supposed to be a power generator, but he had modified it. If he overloaded the capacitors and triggered the discharge all at once, it would create a massive electromagnetic pulse. It would also probably destroy the device and knock out all his own electronics. But that did not matter now. Heian heard Lyra's voice in his ear. They found the basement entrance. One is holding them off with her gun, but it won't stop them for long. Tell her to get away from the metal walls, Heian said. This is going to be loud. He connected the final wires and set the timer for 10 seconds. Then he ran back outside and circled around to the front of the cabin. He could see the hunters inside through the windows, moving toward the basement. One of them was already pulling up the trapdoor. Heian counted, down in his head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The device detonated with a sound like thunder crashing inside a metal drum. Blue lightning arced through the cabin. Every electronic device within 50 meters sparked and died. The lights in the craft armor flickered and went dark. Their weapons shut down. Their helmets stopped working. For a moment, the hunters stood confused. They were so used to their technology that losing it all at once left them vulnerable. That was when Heian struck. He had set traps all around his property over the years. Old military habits. Tripwires connected to homemade explosives. Pressure plates that triggered rock slides. Hidden pits covered with thin wood and leaves. He had never expected to actually use them, but now he was grateful for his paranoia. The first hunter stumbled into a tripwire as it exited the cabin. The explosion sent it flying backward, armor cracked and smoking. The second hunter turned toward the sound and stepped on a pressure plate. A section of the hillside above the cabin gave way, sending tons of rock and snow down on top of it. The third hunter was smarter. It saw what was happening and retreated into the forest, moving fast despite its heavy armor. Heian grabbed a hunting rifle from his emergency cache and followed. This was his mountain. He knew every tree, every rock, every hidden path. The hunter was fast, but Heian was faster in this terrain. He moved through the forest like a ghost, using the trees for cover. The hunter's armor made noise when it moved. Heian could track it by sound alone, He found a good position on a ridge overlooking a narrow valley. The hunter would have to pass through there to reach its ship. Tae-Hyon waited, controlling his breathing, his finger on the trigger. The hunter appeared below, moving cautiously now. It knew it was being hunted. Tae-Hyon aimed for the joint in the armor at the neck, just like Lyra had said. He fired once. The shot hit perfectly. The hunter staggered, but did not fall. Its armor was damaged, but still functional. It turned and fired back with a weapon Tae-Hyon had not seen before. A beam of energy carved through a tree next to him, cutting it like paper. Tae-Hyon rolled away and kept moving. He could not win a direct fight. He had to think. The hunter was chasing him now, crashing through the forest. Tae-Hyon led it toward the cliff edge, a place where the mountain dropped away into a rocky canyon dot at the last second. Tae-Hyon dove to the side. The hunter, moving too fast in its damaged armor, could not stop in time. It went over the edge with a sound that was almost like a scream. The crash echoed up from below. Tae-Hyon lay on the ground, breathing hard. His whole body hurt. His hands were shaking. But he was alive. Lyra's voice came through the earpiece. "Tae-Hyon? Are you okay?" "We heard explosions." "I'm fine," he said. "The hunters are down. All 3 of them." "You killed them?" Lyra sounded shocked. "Krath hunters are some of the best soldiers in the galaxy. How did you kill them?" "I grew up in these mountains," Tae-Hyon said, "and I'm very stubborn." He made his way back to the cabin. It was a mess. The front was destroyed, the basement entrance was exposed, and everything electronic was dead. But Hay-1 and Lyra were safe. Hay-1 was staring at him with new respect. "I forgot how dangerous you could be when you wanted to be." "I didn't want to be," Tae-Hyon said. "But they didn't leave me a choice." Lyra examined her device. The EMP had damaged it, but not completely. She worked on it for several minutes, her fingers moving with practiced skill. Finally, the device flickered back to life. "We need to leave," Hay-1 said. "If those hunters had a ship, others will come looking for them. This location is compromised." "Agreed," Tae-Hyon said. "But first we need to report what happened here. We need to get Lyra's information to people who can use it." They gathered what they could carry and loaded it into Hay-1's vehicle. Tae-Hyon took one last look at his cabin. He had built it with his own hands. It had been his home, his refuge, his prison. Now it was just broken wood and bad memories. "I'm sorry about your home," Lyra said quietly. "It's just a building," Tae-Hyon replied. "People matter more than buildings." They drove down the mountain as the sun set. Hay-1 made calls on a secure line, talking to people she trusted in the military. She showed them pictures of the Krath hunters' bodies and their destroyed ship. She sent them preliminary data from Lyra's device. The response was immediate and terrified. Within hours, emergency meetings were being called. Scientists and military leaders wanted to see Lyra in person. They wanted to examine the evidence. Some believed it immediately. Others thought it was a trick or a hoax, but they could not ignore the dead alien soldiers on the mountain. They could not ignore the technology that was clearly beyond anything humans had built. The truth was too big to hide. As they drove through the night toward a military base, Tae-Hyon realized something. 3 days ago, he had been a man hiding from the world, trying to forget his past. Now he was in the middle of something that would decide the future of his entire species. Lyra sat in the back seat, looking out the window at the passing landscape. "Your world is beautiful," she said. "I hope we can save it." "We will," Tae-Hyon said. "We have to." Hay-1 glanced at him from the driver's seat. "You know what this means, right? You can't go back to hiding. If what Lyra says is true, if the Krath are really coming, we need everyone. We need you." Tae-Hyan nodded slowly. He had spent 5 years running from responsibility. 5 years trying to forget that he had once been a soldier and an engineer. 5 years pretending he could just exist without purpose. Those years were over. "I know," he said. "I'm ready." The vehicle drove on through the darkness, carrying 3 people who knew a secret that would soon change everything. Earth had 6 months to prepare for an enemy it did not know existed. 6 months to get ready for a war that would decide whether humanity survived or became just another extinct species in the Krath's collection. The countdown had begun. The military base was deep underground, built during old wars when people feared nuclear weapons. Now it served a new purpose. In a secure room surrounded by armed guards, Lyra stood before a panel of generals, scientists, and politicians from 6 different nations. Tae-Hyan and Hae-Won sat nearby, watching as Lyra presented her evidence. The device projected images in the air, star maps showing the craft fleet's approach, videos of other species being destroyed, technical data about Krath weapons and ships, documents proving that Earth was next on the list. Some people in the room believed immediately. Others asked hard questions. A few thought it was all fake, some kind of elaborate trick. But as the hours passed and experts examined the evidence, denial became impossible. The technology in Lyra's device was real. The bodies of the Krath hunters were real. The threat was real. A general named Dong-Woo, a hard man with gray hair and suspicious eyes, stood up. "Even if we believe all of this, what can we do? You're saying an advanced alien empire is coming to destroy us in 6 months. We can't build a space fleet in 6 months. We don't even have basic space weapons." "You don't need to match their technology," Lyra said. "You need to survive long enough for help to arrive. The Krath expect easy prey. If you fight hard enough, if you make them pay for every meter of ground, they will hesitate. They are conquerors, yes, but they are also practical. If Earth costs them too much, they might decide to leave you alone." "You're asking us to bleed them," Hae-Won said. "Yes," Lyra replied. "And while you do that, I will send messages to the collective. Some species are too afraid of the Krath to help openly, but others might send support in secret. Weapons, intelligence, technology. But it will take time. And you must buy that time with your own strength." Tae-Hyan spoke up. "She's right. We can't win a fair fight. So we don't fight fair. We use every advantage we have. We know this planet better than they do. We can be unpredictable. We can adapt faster than they expect." General Dong-Woo looked at Tae-Hyan for a long moment. "You killed 3 Krath hunters with homemade traps and a hunting rifle. Is that the kind of fighting you mean?" "Exactly that kind," Tae-Hyan said. "The Krath think we're primitive. Let's use that. Let them underestimate us until it's too late." The meeting lasted 3 days. In the end, a decision was made. 6 nations would form a secret coalition to prepare Earth's defense. They would share resources and knowledge. They would build weapons using whatever technology Lyra could give them. They would train soldiers in new tactics. And they would do it all in secret, because if the public knew about the coming invasion, there would be panic and chaos. Tae-Hyan was given a choice. He could go back to his life, or he could help. It was not really a choice. He joined the project immediately. The first month was chaos. Scientists worked around the clock to understand Lyra's technology. Engineers tried to build weapons that could hurt Krath ships. Military leaders planned strategies for a war unlike any in human history. Tae-Hyan became a bridge between the scientists and the soldiers. He understood both groups. He took alien concepts and found ways to make them work with human technology. It was not elegant, but it was effective. He also spent time with Lyra. She was lonely. the last survivor of her crew, trapped on a world that was not her home. They would sit together late at night when the work was done, and she would tell him about the galaxy, about species that sang instead of speaking, about worlds where oceans floated in the sky, about the collective and its dream of peace among the stars. "Why did you come here yourself?" Te Haiyan asked one night. "Why didn't your people just send a message?" "We tried," Lyra said. "We sent signals to your communication satellites. But your governments did not believe them. They thought it was a hoax or a test. So my team volunteered to come in person. We thought if we could make contact face to face, show you our technology, you would listen." She looked sad. "Most of my team died for that belief." "I'm sorry," Te Haiyan said. "Don't be sorry," Lyra replied. "Be ready. Make their sacrifice mean something." In the second month, things began to change. The scientists made breakthroughs. They could not copy Krath technology exactly, but they could adapt some of it. Missiles that could track ships in space, electromagnetic weapons that could disable armor, shields that might protect cities, at least for a while. More importantly, Te Haiyan's story spread among the soldiers. The man who killed 3 alien hunters with nothing but traps and determination. It became a symbol. If one human could do that, what could millions do together? Training camps opened across the 6 nations. Soldiers learned new tactics. Civilians volunteered to help. Cities began building underground shelters and defense systems, all disguised as normal construction projects. The world was preparing for war, and most people did not even know it. Lyra sent her messages to the collective. Most species did not respond. They were too afraid of Krath revenge. But a few answered. Small shipments of weapons began arriving in remote locations. Information about Krath weaknesses. Medical supplies that could treat injuries from energy weapons. It was not much, but it was something. In the 3rd month, Hei-Wan pulled Te Haiyan aside after a meeting. "We have a problem," she said. "Some politicians want to negotiate with the Krath when they arrive. They think we can make a deal, give the Krath something in exchange for leaving Earth alone." "That's stupid," Te Haiyan said. "Lyra told us what happens to species that try to negotiate. The Krath take everything and give nothing back." "I know," Hei-Wan said. "But people are scared. They want to believe there's an easy answer." "There's no easy answer," Te Haiyan said. "The only answer is to fight." He went to find Lyra. She was in the laboratory, helping scientists understand a piece of technology she had brought. When she saw his face, she knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. "We need to show people what we're really facing," Te Haiyan said. "Can you show them what happened to those other species? Not just data and reports. Can you show them the reality?" Lyra hesitated. "The images are disturbing. Very disturbing." "Good," Te Haiyan said. "People need to be disturbed. They need to understand that this is not a problem we can negotiate away." She agreed. A special presentation was arranged for world leaders. In a secure room, they watched as Lyra showed them the truth. Videos from worlds that had tried to surrender. Cities burning. People being taken away. Entire civilizations erased like they had never existed. When it was over, the room was silent. An older politician from Europe was crying. General Dongwu looked angry enough to break something. "Is there any hope at all?" someone asked. "Yes," Lyra said quietly. "There is always hope. 17 species were destroyed, yes. But in every case, they surrendered quickly. They gave up without a real fight. You still have time. You still have a choice. Fight, and you might survive. Surrender, and you will definitely die." After that day, talk of negotiation stopped. The 6 nations committed fully to defense. Secret became less secret as more people were brought into the project. Factories began producing weapons. Soldiers trained day and night. Scientists worked until they collapsed from exhaustion. Tae Hyan designed defense systems for major cities. He taught soldiers how to use terrain and surprise. He helped build traps and weapons that looked primitive but were devastatingly effective. He became known as the man who understood how to fight enemies more advanced than humans. In the 4th month, Lyra's device detected the Krath fleet entering the outer edges of the solar system. They were 2 months early. The deadline had just become a countdown. They must have heard about their missing hunters, Lyra said. They're accelerating their schedule. Emergency meetings were called. Plans were moved forward. Cities went on high alert. And finally, the secret could not be kept anymore. The governments made a joint announcement to the world. Aliens exist. They are coming. They want to destroy us. We have 2 months to prepare. The world erupted into chaos. Some people panicked. Some people denied it. Some people became angry. But slowly, gradually, the chaos turned into something else. Determination, unity, a refusal to go quietly. Tae Hyan watched news reports showing people around the world joining the defense effort. Factories running 24 hours a day. Volunteers signing up to fight. Cities organizing evacuation plans and shelter systems. The whole planet was becoming a fortress. We're not ready, Hai One said one night as they looked at tactical maps. We need more time. We never have enough time, Tae Hyan replied. But we have something the Krath don't expect. We have 6 billion humans who refuse to die without fighting. Lyra stood with them, looking at the maps of Earth's defenses. I have traveled to many worlds, she said. I have met many species. Some were stronger than humans. Some were smarter. Some were more advanced. But I have never met a species that fights like you do. The Krath think they are hunting prey. They don't realize they're walking into a trap. In the final weeks, everything came together. Weapons were distributed. Soldiers took their positions. Cities were as ready as they could be. And Lara made one last broadcast to the collective, telling them that humanity was standing and fighting. She did not know if anyone would hear it. She did not know if help would come. But she sent it anyway, a message of hope cast into the darkness between stars. The Krath fleet entered orbit around Earth on a Tuesday morning. Hundreds of ships, black and terrible, filling the sky. They sent a message demanding immediate surrender. In the underground command center, General Dongwu stood before his staff. Tae Hyan and Lyra were there too, along with Haewon and leaders from all 6 nations. What do we tell them? Someone asked. Dongwu smiled grimly. We tell them no. And then we show them what happens when you threaten Earth. The first Krath landing ships descended toward New York, Seoul, London, Beijing, and a dozen other major cities. They expected panic. They expected surrender. Instead, they found guns. Every military force on Earth opened fire at once. Missiles streaked into the sky. Railguns that scientists had built using Lyra's technology sent metal slugs moving at impossible speeds. Electromagnetic weapons disrupted Krath shields. It was not enough to stop the invasion, but it was enough to surprise them. 3 landing ships exploded before they reached the ground. Others were damaged and forced to retreat. The Krath had expected to land unopposed. Instead, they faced resistance from a species they had dismissed as primitive. In the underground command center, Tae Hyan watched the battle unfold on dozens of screens. Each one showed a different city, a different fight. Humans were dying, but they were making the Krath pay for every meter. The main fleet is breaking formation, Haewon reported. They're moving to support the landing forces. Good, General Dongwu said. That means we surprised them. Keep the pressure on. Tae-Hyon had a different mission. He was leading a strike team that included soldiers from all 6 nations. Their target was the Kroth flagship, the largest ship in the enemy fleet. Lyra had provided detailed plans of Krath ship designs. If they could reach the flagship and disable it, the entire fleet would lose coordination. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. But volunteers had lined up anyway. They used a captured Kroth shuttle, one that had crashed during the first wave. Lyra had modified it and taught them how to fly it. The shuttle looked damaged on the outside, like debris from the battle. That let them get close to the flagship without being shot down. "I'm sorry I can't come with you," Lyra said before they launched. "But if they detect my biological signature, they'll know something is wrong." "You've done enough," Tae-Hyon said. "You warned us. You gave us the tools to fight. Now we have to do the rest." The shuttle launched from a hidden facility and flew into the chaos. Above Earth, space was full of weapons fire and explosions. Human ships, small and desperate, were attacking the Kroth fleet like insects stinging a giant. They could not win, but they could hurt. Tae-Hyon's shuttle docked with the flagship, pretending to be damaged, craft requesting emergency entry. The craft let them in, not suspecting the trap. The moment the airlock opened, the strike team poured out with weapons ready. The fighting inside the ship was brutal. Kroth soldiers were strong, and their armor was advanced, but they were not used to close combat. Humans fought with knives and explosives when their guns ran out. They fought dirty, using tactics the Kroth had never seen. They fought like they had nothing to lose. Tae-Hyon led his team deeper into the ship, following Lyra's maps. They lost soldiers at every turn. A woman named Ji-Woo died holding off 10 Kroth so the others could advance. A man named Quan sacrificed himself to destroy a security checkpoint with explosives. By the time they reached the core chamber, only 5 members of the strike team remained. Tae-Hyon, Hae-Won, and 3 soldiers whose names he would remember for the rest of his life. The core chamber was enormous, filled with pulsing technology that Tae-Hyon barely understood. But he did not need to understand it. He just needed to destroy it. "Plant the charges," he ordered. They worked fast, placing explosives on key systems. The Kroth realized what was happening and sent reinforcements, but Hae-Won and the soldiers held them off at the entrance. The sound of gunfire echoed through the chamber. Tae-Hyon set the timer for 2 minutes. That would barely give them time to escape, but it was the best they could do. He ran back to the entrance, where Hae-Won was making her last stand. "It's done," he said. "We need to go." But the way back was blocked. Kroth soldiers filled the corridors. There was no way through. They were trapped. "Well," Hae-Won said, reloading her weapon, "at least we hurt them." Then something impossible happened. The lights in the ship flickered and changed color. The Kroth soldiers stopped advancing and looked confused. A new voice came over the ship's communication system, speaking in the Kroth language. Tae-Hyon did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. It was an order to stand down. The airlock behind them opened, and Lyra walked through. But she was not alone. Behind her were soldiers in armor that Tae-Hyon had never seen before. Sleek and silver, decorated with symbols from a dozen different species. "The collective came," Lyra said, smiling. "Your message reached them. Your fight inspired them. Species that were too afraid to resist are resisting now. The Kroth are being attacked on 3 different fronts. They cannot afford to lose ships here." The collective soldiers secured the area while Tae-Hyon's team escaped. The charges in the core chamber exploded as they fled, tearing the flagship apart from the inside. Without the flagship, the Kroth fleet lost coordination and began to retreat, but the battle was not over. The Kroth regrouped and launched one final assault on Earth, throwing everything they had at the planet. For 6 hours, the sky burned with weapons fire. Cities were damaged. Millions died. But humanity held. And then something changed in the craft fleet. They stopped attacking. Their ships began to withdraw from Earth orbit. Communications intercepted by human forces revealed the truth. The craft high command was ordering a retreat. Earth had cost them too much. The resistance from both humanity and the newly emboldened collective species meant this was no longer an easy harvest. The craft were practical above all else. They cut their losses and left docked in the command center. Exhausted soldiers cheered when they saw the enemy ships leaving. General Dongwu sat down heavily, like all the strength had left his body. Hei-1 hugged Tae-Hyun, both of them too tired to speak, but Lyra was quiet. She knew this was not the end. "They will come back," she said. "Maybe not soon, but eventually. The craft do not forget. Then we'll be ready," Tae-Hyun said. "And next time, we won't be alone." In the weeks after the battle, the world changed. The 6 nations that had formed the secret coalition became the core of a new global defense force. Every country joined once they understood the threat was real, but more importantly, Earth was no longer isolated. The collective reached out officially, offering friendship and alliance. Other species wanted to meet the humans who had fought so hard. Some were grateful that humanity's stand had inspired resistance across the galaxy. Others were curious about this stubborn species that refused to die. Lyra became Earth's ambassador to the collective. She traveled between worlds, building relationships and securing support. But she always came back to Earth, the planet she had saved and that had saved her in return. Tae-Han returned to the mountains, but not to hide. He built a new cabin on the same land where everything had started. It became a training facility where soldiers learned the tactics he had developed. How to fight enemies more advanced than themselves. How to turn weakness into strength. How to never give up. Hei-1 led the global defense force, preparing Earth for the day the craft might return. She worked with collective advisors to upgrade human technology. She built fleets and weapons and defenses that would make any invasion costly. 1 year after the battle, Tae-Hyun stood on his mountain and looked at the stars. They no longer seemed empty and cold. They were full of life, of possibilities, of friends and enemies and everything in between. Lyra joined him on the porch of his cabin. She had just returned from a diplomatic mission to 3 different star systems. "I brought you something," she said, handing him a device. "It's a communicator that works across light years. Now you can talk to people across the galaxy." "Why would I want to do that?" Tae-Hyun asked, smiling. "Because you're famous," Lyra said. "The human who killed 3 craft hunters. The soldier who led the attack on their flagship. Species across the galaxy know your name. They want to learn from you." Tae-Hyun shook his head. "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who did what needed to be done." "That is exactly what a hero is," Lyra replied. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains. Somewhere above, human ships were patrolling the solar system alongside collective vessels. Earth was no longer alone and defenseless. The craft had come to harvest humanity, expecting easy prey. Instead, they had awakened something dangerous. A species that fought when they should have surrendered. A species that adapted when they should have broken. A species that inspired others through their refusal to accept defeat. In the collective, humans became known for their stubbornness and creativity. Other species studied human military tactics. Human soldiers trained alongside alien warriors. Human engineers worked with scientists from 100 different worlds. And on Earth, people looked to the stars with new understanding. They were not alone. They had allies. They had purpose. They had proven that even against impossible odds, They could survive. Taehyun's cabin became a meeting place for humans and aliens who wanted to learn how to resist oppression. Soldiers came to train. Diplomats came to talk. Scientists came to share knowledge. The cabin that had once been a place of isolation became a symbol of unity. Lyra stayed on Earth most of the time, though she was free to go anywhere in the galaxy. When asked why, she gave a simple answer. This is my home now. These are my people. I came to warn them of danger, but they taught me something more important. They taught me that courage is not about being fearless. It is about being afraid and fighting anyway. Years later, when the craft finally did return with a larger fleet, they found something very different from the primitive world they remembered. They found a planet defended by multiple species. They found technology they did not expect. They found humans who were ready for them. The second battle lasted 3 days and ended with the Croth retreating again. This time, collective forces pursued them back to their own territory. The hunters had become the hunted. Taehyun was older now, with gray in his hair and scars on his body. But he still trained soldiers. He still built defenses. He still refused to give up. One quiet evening, as he sat on his porch watching stars that were no longer strange, he thought about the night he had found Lyra hiding in his shed. That moment had changed everything. It had pulled him out of isolation and given him purpose. He had saved her life that night. But in doing so, she had saved his too. And together, they had helped save Earth. The galaxy was a dangerous place full of species that wanted to conquer and destroy. But it was also a place of hope and alliance. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through advanced technology or superior weapons, but through simple, stubborn courage. And in a universe full of wonders and terrors. That courage had proven to be humanity's greatest strength.